This story is another fable of an old sea traveler. He doesn't always tell the truth, but he always tells interesting things. So make yourself comfortable, listen carefully, and don't forget to support the channel by subscribing and giving your feedback, so that the next stories will be even better. I've spent most of my life trusting maps more than people. Maps don't lie, maps don't panic, maps don't drink the last bottle of rum and blame seagulls for it. But the day I found that compass, I realized there are places even maps refuse to admit exist. It happened after a long night of calm sailing, the kind of night when the sea whispers instead of roars. At dawn, something bumped our hull, soft, repetitive, like someone knocking politely. We pulled it aboard, a small wooden box, sealed with wax and rope, old enough that even the barnacles were elderly. Inside, a compass, but not like any compass I've seen in my many unfortunate years. The needle didn't spin, the needle didn't point north, it pointed nowhere, as in directly into the wooden lid, straight up. At first I thought it was broken. The crew agreed, loudly. But then the needle twitched, only once, but enough to make everyone go silent. It didn't point toward land or stars or wind. It pointed toward the sky. My first officer joked that maybe treasure was floating above us. My second officer joked that maybe his brain finally snapped. But the compass kept insisting, upward. So I did something no sane captain would do. I followed it, not because I trusted the compass, but because I wanted to prove it wrong. The moment we turned the wheel, the sea changed, not in color or shape, in feeling, like it was pushing us, gently but deliberately, toward something it didn't want us to miss. By noon, the sky looked different, too clear, too bright. And then the fog that rose not from the sea, but from the air itself, like a curtain dropping in the middle of the sky. We sailed into it. For a few seconds we saw nothing, only pale gray light, thick enough to touch, thin enough to breathe, and then the compass needle stopped, perfectly still, pointing forward. We emerged from the fog, and that's when we saw it. A ship, floating without sails, moving without waves, drifting across the sky like a ghost too lazy to haunt anything properly. It wasn't a skyboat like the fishermen's. It wasn't held by ropes or magic or clouds. It simply existed where a ship should never be. And on its deck, someone stood, a figure in a long coat, hands behind their back, watching us calmly, as if waiting. My crew whispered. My heart knocked louder than the hull that morning, but I didn't turn away, because the compass, the cursed, impossible compass, was pointing directly at them, and they lifted their hand, not to greet us, not to warn us, but to gesture us closer. The crew didn't talk about the compass for the rest of the evening, though everyone kept glancing at it as if it might start dancing on the table again. I tucked it into my coat, hoping it would stay quiet long enough for me to sleep. It didn't. That night, just as the moon reached its highest point, a faint tapping came from inside my pocket. Soft, patient, like someone knocking on a tiny door. I pulled the compass out and held it close. The needle wasn't pointing north anymore. It was trembling, not spinning, not shaking. Trembling, almost like it was scared. I woke the first mate. Then he woke the navigator, and of course the navigator panicked loud enough to wake everyone else. Within minutes, the whole crew crowded around me, staring at the trembling needle like it was about to explode. But it didn't explode. It spoke, not with a voice, more like a tug behind the eyes, a feeling that wasn't mine, a direction, a pull. Somewhere far beyond the usual routes, a sane pirate sails. The compass wanted us to follow. The crew argued loudly. Some said we should throw it overboard. Others said it was a sign from the sea spirits. One suggested we sell it, but no one could agree who'd dare touch it long enough to make the deal. In the end, we did what sailors always do when reason fails, we followed the stupid idea. At dawn, we set sail toward nothing in particular, just the direction the compass insisted on. The sea was calm, the wind steady, but something felt different. Not dangerous, just watched. Hours passed. Then the sky changed, not darkened, not brightened, changed, like someone had taken the horizon and bent it slightly. The clouds seemed stretched, the light a bit too golden, the waves too quiet. And then we saw it, a silhouette, not an island, not a ship, something between the two, a floating structure made of driftwood, ropes, sails, and old lanterns, a ramshackle fortress drifting with no anchor, no crew, and no sensible explanation. The compass needle pointed straight at it. The crew hesitated, but I didn't. Curiosity has ruined many captains before me, and I felt my turn had finally come. We boarded it carefully. The wood creaked under our boots, but the whole thing held together surprisingly well, as if maintained by invisible hands. Lanterns flickered despite having no flame. Ropes tightened themselves, doors swung open before we touched them. The entire place felt alive. At the center of the floating fortress stood a table. On it lay a map, but not one that showed land or sea. This map displayed something else entirely, a swirling path over oceans that didn't exist anymore, and markings no pirate had ever used. Beside the map sat a single object, a compass almost identical to mine. Same shape, same metal, same faint trembling. Only this one was cracked, as if whoever used it hadn't survived the journey it led them on. My crew grew restless. Some wanted to leave immediately. Others were fascinated. I didn't know how to feel, until my own compass slipped from my hand and rolled across the table, stopping exactly beside its broken twin. Both needles aligned. Both trembled in perfect unison, and then the air shifted. A voice, distant, thin, like carried across time, whispered, "Not the end, only the next path." The fortress groaned, the ropes tightened. The sea around us stirred, rising slowly, too slowly to be natural. Whatever the compass had shown us so far, it was only the beginning, and somewhere beneath the floating fortress, something shifted in the deep. The path narrowed as I pushed deeper into the jungle, the air thick with that strange metallic echo hiding somewhere beneath the leaves. I'd already lost sight of my crew, partly because they wandered too slowly, and partly because they refused to follow me after hearing the first whispering steps behind us. Fair enough. I didn't blame them. I kept walking, brushing vines aside, until the ground beneath me changed, softer, like walking over drums. When I stepped again, the same hollow thump answered, not from my feet, but from ahead, as though someone else had stepped exactly where I would step. A heartbeat before me. I stopped. The echo stopped. I stepped again. The jungle stepped back, not loudly, not threateningly, just perfectly mimicking me. I'd heard sailor tales of creatures that repeat voices but footsteps. That was new, and far more unsettling. I moved toward a clearing, and that's when I saw them. Rows of old wooden masks hanging from branches, carved with broad grins and wide eyes. Wind shifted through them, making each mask nod as though greeting me. Beneath them lay a single path of footprints, huge ones, wider than barrels, pressed deep into the soil. The echo didn't come from those. Something else was walking in my shadow. I followed the footprints until I reached a giant stone arch. It rose from the earth like the rib of some ancient beast. On the inner wall, carved symbols spiraled inward, shapes of feet, overlapping and circling like a dance frozen in time. Then the jungle behind me whispered, not words, just the softest tap, tap, tap of feet trying to match mine. I turned sharply. "Show yourself," I said. My voice sounded braver than I felt. Nothing emerged, but the footsteps kept moving, circling me now, shifting around the clearing as if someone invisible was choosing the perfect angle to approach. All right then, I muttered, stepping forward. If you're following me, keep up. I walked beneath the arch. On the other side, the air changed instantly, warmer, still, and for the first time since entering the jungle, the echo vanished. My steps were alone again. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone drum carved from a single slab, its surface polished smooth. Around it were carvings of figures dancing, chasing one another in loops. When I touched the drum, the ground responded, not with sound, but with movement. The earth beneath shifted slightly, trembling, and then I heard it. Not footsteps, breathing. Slow, heavy breathing coming from inside the stone. I backed away. The breathing grew louder, like something enormous was waking after years of sleep. Leaves rustled behind me as the invisible footsteps approached again, faster this time, circling protectively as if warning me to stay back. But I didn't, because the stone drum cracked. A line split across its surface, and a soft golden glow seeped through. The ground rumbled harder. The carved dancers on its side began to shift, sliding along the stone like living shadows. Then the drum opened, not with a violent explosion, but with a slow unfolding, like a flower blooming. Inside lay a creature unlike anything I'd seen, not monstrous, not frightening. A towering being shaped almost like a man, but made entirely of smooth, dark stone. Its eyes glowed faintly, matching the cracks in its body. It stepped out, the earth shaking under its weight, and as it stood before me, the invisible footsteps stopped, because they were no longer invisible. From the shimmering air around me, shapes emerged, humanoid figures made of dust and wind, each one matching the echoes I heard earlier. They bowed to the stone giant. Then, to my confusion, they bowed to me. The giant leaned down, placing a hand on the earth. The jungle quieted. The arch behind me glowed softly. And though the creature never spoke a word, I understood its message with absolute clarity. I had awakened something sacred, something old, something that did not belong to men, but trusted me enough to let me leave unharmed.